This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, the world's first literate writing critic. Today we are taking a look at hands and teeth. Not literal hands and teeth, we're talking about a story here. This title really intrigues me, and I haven't read the story, and we're going to get right into it. This story has a preamble before it, written in italics, so let's see what they have going on. So what follows is a true story. I realize that many have used that sentence as a poor attempt to add creep factor to the story, so I don't expect you to believe me. I hope that you consider something. And maybe you can remember like I have. You know the times when you have that feeling of nameless dread, unable to sleep but too scared to get out of bed to leave the room? Sometimes you're even too fearful to reach out your hand to turn on the bedside light. Then, only sometimes, accompanied by a jolting sense of falling, sleep will take you. Those times. I came to dread those times. Yes, remembering may not be for you. Maybe you're just happier dealing with the unknown fear. I wasn't, and although it's been a difficult time, I'm glad I made the effort to remember what happened to me during those unsettling times. My dread has decreased because it now has a face, or at least hands, I think. So that was 3 short paragraphs of a preamble to tell you about this story that is about 8 paragraphs long. That's a little weird, you know. It's very important that when you're dealing with these kinds of stories and you're trying to make them realistic, yet unique and interesting, you find a clever way to tell your audience something that they've been told before. This explanation of this is a true story, and I know many people have used that as a poor attempt, that is just too blatantly on its face not interesting. It's true that many people have used that preamble to get people creeped out, but you have to think of something more unique than that. That's very generic. The story is doing a lot of, I guess we haven't even gotten to the story yet, but we're doing a lot of telling here, and I don't know that this benefits the story. It's so generic right off the bat, and you're designed to read this first. I think that's what you're supposed to do. It's so boring and bland. And it's also seemingly from the perspective of someone who is still scared of the dark. Now, it's perfectly reasonable for adults to be scared of the dark, but who out there is this scared of the dark as an adult? Is our narrator supposed to be a child? I just don't know what's going on here. Also a little clumsily worded, but I did read that part and a little bit of the first paragraph, which does pique my interest. So let's get to the first paragraph. In Afrikaans, there was a great word, latalmitteljet. It means late lamb, a term for a child who is much younger than his or her siblings. I am the late lamb, born 9 years after my brother and 10 years after my sister. Like a lamb, I was gentle, innocent, but the comparison doesn't go much further. We were a one-parent household, and I think my mom had used up all of her fussiness busying over my brother and sister. I was independent and proud of it, intelligent for my age. I think it was because I spent a lot of time with older people. Kids my age had their heads too far in fantasyland for my liking. We often went on short breaks, loved being in the mountains. And we just loved being in the mountains. Oh my God, can you read? I cannot. Google Drakensberg, and you will see. So here's what we're going to do, since we're dealing with someone who is a native to South Africa. We are going to give this person a complete pass on grammar, because it's very clear that this was either translated or supposed to be translated. This is something that I think is difficult, and a lot of people who like creepypasta and like realist horror have a very narrow mindset because we're limited to the English literary world. So I want to know what other kinds of realistic horror stories there are from around the world. And if you do as our author says here and Google Drakensberg, you will see beautiful vistas of mountains that you wouldn't imagine would be in South Africa. I would love being in those mountains as well. They're absolutely beautiful. But let's press on. We once stayed in a small chalet called Rodenwell, literally round house. I was 10 at this particular time, and I was enjoying my independence more and more. I was absolutely thrilled to get my own room that time. I didn't have to deal with my sister's sleep talking or even my brother's farts. I wanted to be a geologist and would spend my days collecting amazing quartz crystals, sometimes the size of my 2 fists put together. One evening, the caretaker of the chalet spotted me returning from my best hunt ever, a whole bag full. My smile was returned. It seemed like we were connected that moment. He beckoned me over with a wave of his hand, but I hesitated. Something in the way that his wrist moved, I think, but I dismissed it as a trick of the light. I showed him my haul for the day, and he said he'd tell me all about the crystals. So we have a very vivid idea of who our narrator is here. They have this very interesting background of being from South Africa. They are interested in geology. They have an affinity for the mountains, and they collecting quartz crystals. This is unique, and the preamble that we got doesn't do anything to make the story feel more real. The fact that this person has a very vivid idea of their childhood, that is very personable. That makes me connect with this person immediately. This preamble hurts the story so much. I'm sure it's driven a lot of people away from reading what might pan out to be a really interesting story. So let's press on. What makes crystals so mesmerizing, he said, are the things that we feel inside of them. Things, feelings, history all stored inside, continually bouncing off the flat surfaces inside. I love the idea. I had a prism set up next to my window, and I was mesmerized by the light, by the way it split light. He asked if he could tell me a secret about crystals. His voice was taking on a mock-awe-filled tone. Ooh, I like that. That's something that you gotta do with young people sometimes, is like, do you want to hear a secret? Like, that very condescending fakeness that a lot of adults give the children is really annoying. And also really realistic. That's something that adults like to do for some reason. But our little narrator is mesmerized, and so am I. Let's keep going. What about crystal balls, then? I thought I was so clever. I don't like round things. I never have. Round things attract things different things. He raised his eyebrows and seemed to hold back his laugh. He let a giggle slip through, though, and as he did so, he gave me a knowing wink. Somehow, it was only then that I really saw his eyes. Big, round eyes. Almost a perfect circle, with the biggest irises I have ever seen, and tiny black dots of pupil in the center. My eyes blurred, and at some stage I snapped out of it. He turned back towards his house, and left me motionless for a while. I shrugged it off and went back to my room, where my mom had left me some food. I wasn't hungry, but I ate anyway. The bed seemed to be out of place in the rowadel, kind of floating in the middle of the room without corners. I feel that this story would benefit greatly from having a native English speaker go over it and edit it with the person who wrote it. That way you would get an accurate translation of what's going on. But overall, I can see the moves that the story's making, and I really am intrigued by it. I did a quick image Google search for shallots and for roadel, and you get beautiful images of these little hut-like things for roadels, and shallots are like these little beautiful rustic mountain houses. They look like something you would expect to see from like an American's perspective of what Switzerland looks like. Like if you picture a Swiss house, that's what a shallot looks like. With no moon in the sky and no electric lights for miles around, you'd be surprised to find how much light comes from the stars. I noticed that I could see the shadows better from the corner of my eye, so I kind of rolled my eyes from left to right, seeing if I could make everything out. I thought I noticed a green spark from the corner of my eye, but I reckoned it was either a firefly or those lights you see when you're close to lights, when you close your eyes tightly. I had fun with it, seeing if I can make it happen. Wait, that's weird. I had fun with it, seeing if I could make it happen. Rolling my eyes right, nothing. Rolling back left, spark. Right, black, left, green, I thought as I moved my eyes again and again, sort of like a mantra, sort of like a silent mantra. I cannot follow what was just written. That's perplexing. Eventually I got tired of my game and closed my eyes for sleep. I felt weirdly disconnected from my body and started to notice my breathing was becoming shallower and faster instead of deeper and slower. With the change in my breathing came a pressure on my chest, like a plank had been laid across it from one armpit to another. My body began to feel afraid, and my mind seemed to be detached. It became more and more distant from feeling body until I yanked back, my muscles all tensing at the same time and then relaxing, lifting the pressure from my chest and easing my breathing gently. Again, it's a good thing that this story is getting a pass on grammar, because that's a little, the phrasing here is just not good. But the idea of laying a plank across someone's chest is very visual. Obviously that's just a metaphor, that's not actually happening, but that's a very vivid image, and I like that. It's very visual. I opened my eyes to roll them just once more before sleep, but instead, my friend, the spark, I saw a pair of spindly hands clap in front of my face, just in front of my nose. The small breeze the clap generated blew onto my face, and that's all I can remember from my time awake that night. I dreamed dreams of green lights glowing through window panes, lighting up faces with eyes that were too round, necks that were too long, fingers that bent in strange ways, tracing like patterns in the air. The fingers were playing a harp whose strings stretched every which way with no end. Then their eyes closed and mouths opened. They opened too wide, lips pulled back too far, teeth too close to me. They repeatedly closed their mouths and opened them, getting faster and faster, chattering teeth sounding like crystals hitting slate. All the time getting closer to me, first starting near my feet and moving up my body, and oh my God, not my head. Please no. I woke up shouting and jumped from my bed, standing on the sharp crystals, cutting my foot. I had them in their bag, but they were now all over the floor, seeming to be spaced evenly throughout. We left that morning. I didn't tell anyone. I told myself that I had a vivid nightmare, but I know for certain that the hands were as real as the crystals I left behind. I still see them. Now, it's really hard to judge this story. That's the end of it, by the way. It's really hard to judge the story for what it is because of its poor grammar, because it's not been localized well. But it's brimming with beautiful visuals and interesting scenery and a unique perspective and a unique mechanic overall, despite all of the story's many flaws, it is really successful as realist horror. This is something that is within the realm of possibility. You can think of 1,000 rational reasons as to why those quartz crystals would be spread out across his room. Someone just playing a prank on him forgetting that he did this, etc., etc. So this could be a very real thing that happened to this child, an unexplained instance in their life. I think a lot of people, if they think really deep and hard about this, even if they're rational thinkers like myself and don't believe in spirits and that kind of stuff, they can come up with an explanation. They can come up with a situation that is like this where they don't have an explanation for it. And whether you find this creepy or not, what I do admire about this story is that it is this person saying, hey, this weird thing happened to me, and it freaked me out, and if it doesn't freak you out, that's fine. But this is a very personal experience. These stories don't have to creep everyone out. But I think when you read this, you can feel the narrator's feelings about this matter. And I empathize with him because of that. This story's biggest problem is the preamble. It doesn't need to be there, like any of it. The story is just better at taking all of that out. But when we go down to the comments, someone left, Broadway Baby left the comment. I love this story personally. Great job. I agree. But then Rigsby Death said, fake. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have people who are going around leaving comments. Fake. Yeah, it's on a fucking Creepypasta website, you goddamn retard. What are you expecting? But fake or not, the story is realistic. I enjoy it. I can look past the bad grammar and the stupid, unnecessary preamble because the core of it I find interesting. Let me know what you think below, and let's get on to today's sponsor, which is hooked up to us by Sean Murphy. Today's episode was brought to you by Phantom Limb Syndrome. I'm not touching you.